Strap on your tinfoil hats and bring out your best Charlie Day memes, because it's time for some conspiracy theory nonsense. Both the Xbox and Nintendo sides of the gaming internet are abuzz with speculation, amid rumours that the Xbox Game Pass could very well be coming to the Nintendo Switch this year. All of this speculation can be traced back to a video featuring head of Xbox Phil Spencer. It wasn't anything Spencer said which has grabbed attention. It's more what he was sat next to. Dear viewer, the truth is out. Phil Spencer owns a Switch. Dun dun dun. Spencer is known for planting little references and hints on the shelf in his videos, which is why viewers are attempting to read so much into this. What's more, a prominent Xbox leaker has hinted that, quote, the cat seems to be out of the bag on Nintendo and Xbox, and that more news is coming in the fall. Let me make something clear. These rumours are incredibly flimsy. None of this holds water, and if you genuinely believe that the Xbox Game Pass is coming to the Switch simply because Phil Spencer posed for a video next to a Nintendo console, then you are a fool. That said, you are in good company because I agree with you. Who's more foolish, the fool or the fool who follows them? After all, Microsoft has made it clear that their game plan isn't to sell Xbox consoles. It's arguably never been about this, but rather to sell Game Pass. The Xbox itself is a delivery system, and if you'd rather play on PC or on mobile, or yes, on Switch, that's fine too. Spencer once said that the company would consider bringing Game Pass to Switch, and even to PlayStation, although he didn't make it sound like this was plan A at the time. He said, I love the Switch, I love PlayStation, honestly, I think they've done an amazing job as being part of this industry. I'm not sure that those are the next big set of users for us, but we could be open to those discussions. I think for us it's all about priority and reaching more players. So we went to PC first after Xbox, because there's just so many players there, globally, that don't own an Xbox, that we could go reach. We went to mobile next, because there's a billion Android phones on the planet. The logical next step would be the Switch, especially considering how pally Nintendo and Microsoft have become recently. I'm just saying. Okay, so putting aside my own personal speculation about what Nintendo and Microsoft may or may not be cooking up, because we don't have enough evidence either way, at this point bringing Game Pass to Switch would make perfect sense for Microsoft, and there are several ways that they could do it. It wouldn't be possible to simply dump the entirety of the Game Pass onto the Switch, because with the best will in the world, it's a handheld console with HDMI out. It was never ever ever intended to run Starfield or what have you. Getting Game Pass onto Switch would require some creativity, some ingenuity, flexibility, cheating. One plan I've heard suggested would be for Microsoft to offer a Switch-only smaller Game Pass, which only provides games that can actually run on the Switch. Personally, I'd love this. It'd be my favourite way for this to work, but I don't think that would be ideal for Microsoft. They'd rather not muddy the waters with another variation on the Game Pass, and if at all possible, they want players to buy the big, expensive Ultimate Game Pass, rather than a Game Pass Lite, which only has Banjo-Kazooie and Undertale. It's a shame, because I'd happily pay for a subscription service that's just Banjo-Kazooie and Undertale. That's my jam. So what if the Switch hardware wasn't actually processing the games? What if Microsoft could do that on their end and just beam the gameplay directly onto your Switch? In 2019, speaking about Microsoft's plan for the future, Phil Spencer once said, when you talk about Nintendo and Sony, we have a ton of respect for them, but we see Amazon and Google as the main competitors going forward. That's not to disrespect Nintendo and Sony, but the traditional gaming companies are somewhat out of position. Spencer was talking specifically about positioning Xbox as the rival to Google's Stadia, with the then-named xCloud, which has since been rebranded as Xbox Cloud Gaming, and which has become an extra perk included in the Ultimate tier for Xbox Game Pass. Xbox has invested a lot of resources into this cloud service, although I would suspect their plan to rely on this model of gaming probably adjusted somewhat after they saw what happened with Stadia. As it turns out, nobody wants to pay for a video game subscription service with no unique games, which is sold primarily on the benefit of no installation times. That's just not a thing that people wanted. Nevertheless, Xbox Cloud Gaming is still very much a part of Microsoft's plan to get games to as many people as possible, in as many forms as possible. While the Switch can't handle beefy current-gen games, it can handle cloud gaming. There are even a pair of prominent cloud games already on the Nintendo Switch. Control and Hitman 3 can be purchased for the device, if you want to pay for a game that you don't actually own, but are instead allowed to look at every so often, provided you have a stable internet connection and the servers haven't already been shut off. I don't really expect this model of cloud gaming, the one-off purchase model, to really take off on the Switch. This is a glorified rental system, and its impermanence makes me feel uncomfortable. Once the servers for Control and Switch get turned off, your game is gone forever. With a subscription service, though, this downside disappears. You pay until you don't want to anymore, or until the service gets shut down. Everybody wins. So that's one possible solution. Imperfect, but it would allow all players to enjoy a lot of otherwise impossible games on the Switch, as long as their internet connection is okay. At the moment, Xbox Cloud Gaming doesn't include all games that are available through Game Pass, but who knows what Microsoft's plans for the future of this service might be. Personally, I tested Control on the Switch, and even at the lower graphical settings my internet wasn't quite up to scratch. And I pay a lot for good internet, so that's no good. Or maybe I'm just getting ripped off. There is a third, perhaps slightly more sneaky way that Game Pass could work on the Switch. Something which Nintendo pioneered with the Wii U, and which Sony straight up stole for Remote Play. It's possible that we could get Xbox Game Pass on the Switch, with the Switch essentially acting as a remote screen for the Xbox console. Yeah, this isn't ideal, but it is a possibility. There would be a single app on the Switch that would let players connect it via Wi-Fi to their Xbox Series whatever, and the games would run on that console, but you would play them on the Switch. I used to use Remote Play a lot. It let me play Persona 5 in the bathtub, on the cheap PS Vita that I bought off eBay for £40. It's a service which does the job. I couldn't use it for action games though, because there was just slightly too much lag for it to work. And of course, I still get a little bit out of my Wii U screen, although it's not the ideal way to play those games. This then would be the least appealing way for Microsoft to bring Xbox Game Pass to the Switch, but it is still a possibility. And then there is one final option, one which I hope isn't the case, but which I must stress yet again. It could be that Phil Spencer is just trolling us. That Switch is there purely to get people talking about a Nintendo Xbox crossover. Or alternatively, it means that there's some other deal between the two companies. Maybe they're going to make green Joy-Cons or whatever. Either way, until we actually hear more about what Microsoft and Nintendo may or may not be planning, I suggest that you don't hold out for a big announcement. But honestly, what do I know? Feel free to jump down into the comments and tell me how wrong I am. Or, if you've got the benefit of hindsight and you're watching this in the future, tell me how I was an idiot for not predicting things sooner. Thank you for watching.